Canada Strong is. And I'm thrilled to be joined by Nova Scotia MPs and candidates Shannon, Darren, Lena, Jaime, Cody, Jessica, Braden, and Alana. And this is what a strong government looks like behind me. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. You know, I don't have to be asked twice to come to Halifax. In fact, I insist on coming to Halifax. I've been coming here for decades for vacations, for business. I love jogging in Point Pleasant Park, dining on Argyle Street. In fact, I can't exhaust all the restaurants. And it's great to be back in Nova Scotia for today's announcement because it ties in with the province's long history with the sea and its proud legacy of shipbuilding from Yarmouth to Pictou, from Lunenburg, and of course here to Halifax. Je suis très content d'être ici à Halifax.
I'm very happy to be here in Halifax to talk about the future, to really talk about the future in a city that has so much history. Many years ago, the people came to this country for the first time, and they set foot in Canada right here. And here is where so many Canadian soldiers embarked to ensure the freedom of humanity. The port of Halifax was their last view of Canada. This chapter in our history was written right here. And today, with you, the workers, we are writing a new chapter.
Like those around me and behind me who have made this city, this province, and this country what it is today. You, those who came before you, forged our very history, and you are building our future. Whenever Canada is in need, workers such as here at the Irving Shipyard have stepped up. And I want to say thank you. My colleagues want to say thank you on behalf of a grateful nation. And we need you because these are challenging times. Our world is changing. It's becoming more divided and dangerous. Our adversaries are increasingly emboldened, and the norms that have kept Canada and the world secure are in peril. The priorities of the United States, once closely aligned to our own, have shifted. Our sovereignty is under threat.
Our relationship with the United States has always been important, but we can no longer depend on it as we have in the past. The world can no longer depend either on it.
President Trump wants to break us so America can own us. We will not let that happen. You know, as Canadians, we're over the shock of the betrayal, but we should never forget the lessons. We have to look out for ourselves, and we have to look out for each other. And that's what Canadians do. And that's what my government is doing during this crisis. We're acting to protect workers affected by the tariffs. We're using every dollar collected from our retaliatory tariffs to protect those workers, as I announced last week, because we know that we are stronger when we are together. We cannot let anyone, not American politicians, or Canadian politicians, make us angry or divided. Well, President Trump's plan is to divide and conquer. Pierre Poilievre's plan is to divide and be conquered. His negative slogans aren't solutions. His anger isn't action. His division isn't strength. Negativity won't win a trade war. Negativity won't pay the rent or the mortgage. Negativity won't bring down the price of groceries. Negativity won't make Canada strong. And the first part of Canada Strong, it means an armed forces that are well-resourced and has those very resources at the ready. And we're here, I'm here, to make that happen. Our military is still underfunded. Under the last Conservative government, when Pierre Poilievre was a minister, that government was spending less than 1% of GDP on defense. And Conservatives abandoned our armed forces and shamefully abandoned our veterans, closing area offices across Canada. Since then, Canada has doubled down on our national shipbuilding strategy, which right here in Halifax is creating good-paying union jobs for Canadian workers.
We have created good jobs and success in our shipyards from one coast to the other. And since then, we have reversed the decision of the previous Conservative government.
Technologies and working with new partners, including Australia. And I made an announcement in Nunavut last week to protect Canadians. We are building new military installations and increasing the presence of Canadian armed forces in the Arctic to defend our sovereignty, the North, and those who call it home. And since the end of Pierre Poilievre's Conservative government, defense spending has more than doubled. I repeat, defense spending has more than doubled in the last decade. But it's not enough for the new environment we're in. And that's why today I'm announcing my plan to rebuild, reinvest, and rearm. We will expand the capabilities of the Navy with new submarines and additional heavy icebreakers to defend the North. We will deliver an unprecedented acceleration of investment in our armed forces so that we can defend every inch of our sovereign territory while helping to support and defend our allies abroad. Wanted to come here today to make clear, we are fully committed to all orders underway through the National Shipbuilding Strategy. That's over 21,000 jobs across the country, including 9,500 right here in Halifax and Dartmouth, supported each year through the construction of 8 Arctic and offshore patrol ships and 15 River-class destroyers. This is crucial. This is crucial. But, you know, when I was, just take a moment, when I was, had the pleasure of taking the tour with Nancy Lockhart, I met a young apprentice, Victoria, who said, "This gives me a career." And that's a key message. We are building for the long term. We're building Canada strong, not for an election cycle, but to protect Canadians. We're building for the long term. And these people behind me, their children, their friends, their neighbors, have careers in shipbuilding to protect this great country. Now, we have more to do in the immediate term. We will move immediately to fill the Canadian Armed Forces shortage of over 14,000 members by modernizing our recruitment process, giving Canadian Forces members a raise, building new on-base housing, improving access to doctors, mental health services, and childcare. And we'll ensure that Canadian troops defending Canada at home have the same equipment capabilities as those defending our allies abroad. We will expand the reach and the ability of the Canadian Coast Guard and integrate them into our NATO defense capabilities. We will give the Canadian Coast Guard a new mandate and the right equipment to conduct maritime surveillance to secure our coasts. We will also create first-class drone capability that will build and deploy aquatic and airborne uncrewed vehicles to defend our Arctic, our undersea infrastructure, our borders, and yes, our allies. And when doing this, we will ensure, as much as possible, that Canadian companies benefit from Canadian procurements, an end to sending dollar after dollar south of the border to a nation that is threatening us. They will use Canadian steel and aluminum. They will use Canadian suppliers and companies. They will use and employ Canadian workers. And that's all part of a broader modernization of how we procure. We will modernize our procurement legislation so that our forces can buy equipment when they need and what they need, which is now. Now, we don't want any more excuses for leaving funds on the table when we need to strengthen our defenses. Every dollar will be focused on value for money, ensuring we make wise investments in building our capabilities and getting us to our 2% NATO target before 2030. Our sovereignty faces the greatest threats in generations. The world is becoming more divided and dangerous. And this plan will help ensure that Canada is strong at home and strong abroad. My government is building, arming, and investing in the Canadian Armed Forces. My government is stepping up and fighting for Canada. We're defending our borders, our sovereignty, our minerals, our water, our land, our way of life. Le Canada est fort.
Canada is strong.
Ensemble, on va le rendre
Together,
encore plus fort.
we will make it even stronger.
Et on va rester.
We are,
chez nous.
and we will remain, masters in our own home.
Finally, this is the most consequential election of our lifetimes. And my government is meeting the moment with purpose and with force. Canadians want solutions, not slogans. They want positive action, not anger. They want calm, not chaos. They want strength, not division. They want a government that will fight for them. My government is doing that, and we always will, because we know that together, we are Canada strong. Merci. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Now I'll take your question.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now begin the question period. We'll take a question from the delegation and then a few local questions at the very end. First question.
Good morning.
Yep.
Good morning, Steve Chase with the Globe and Mail. We have a story today in the paper about India's efforts to meddle in the last Conservative leadership race. Now, your predecessor had asked Pierre Poilievre to get a security clearance so he could obtain briefings about threats. You, of course, have obtained a security clearance. You've been briefed. And that brings me to my question. Just before the election, you removed a 3-term Liberal candidate from the riding of Nepean, Chandra Arya. That's a very serious decision and a very drastic decision. You've been briefed. Can you tell us why this was necessary, and did it have something to do with his close relations with the Modi government in India?
Thank you for your question, Steve. Let me say a few things. The first is that I find it beyond baffling. I find it downright irresponsible that the leader of the opposition, day after day, month after month, year after year, refuses to obtain his security clearance. As a normal course in peacetime when times were tranquil, that's unacceptable then. But at this point in our history, when we face the greatest threats that we faced in generations, in most of our lifetimes, he has to answer for that. And he particularly has to answer for that, given the reporting that I understand you did, you and your colleagues did today, and the lack of integrity in the Conservative leadership race. Now, I will observe that in the Liberal leadership race, every effort was made to protect the integrity of that race, including, I'll be frank, quite an onerous technical system for voting to verify identity, location, so that that was held up. And some people couldn't vote because of that. We decided to take that risk because we wanted the highest integrity for that race. As part of that process, of course, there were reviews of candidates and suitability, myself included, appropriately. Certain information came to light. I'm not privy to the exact information. It's a separate process. Certain candidates were disqualified from that race. That information was relevant to the decision of what is a separate body within the Liberal Party. It was called a Green Light Committee that made the decision to disqualify Mr. Arya. I can assure you that information that we have, I'm saying broadly as a party, not me personally, because I don't have the specific information, is shared with the relevant authorities. We take this incredibly serious. Steve, I want to make one other point, if I may, and I'll hand back. One of the acts that I took as Prime Minister in the 9 days between being sworn in and asking the Governor General to dissolve Parliament and call this election was to strengthen the critical election incident protocol. It's a protocol that had been put in place a few years ago, but various measures to strengthen that, and also to encourage greater transparency from that group during the election campaign, so that if issues arise during the election campaign, in their independent judgment, that they will share with all Canadians and ensure that Canadians have the confidence, which I have at this point, the full confidence in the integrity of the federal election process. I'll hand back. Pardon? En français, en ce qui concerne. Alors, en résumé,
so just to summarize, it is irresponsible, the position being taken by the leader of the Conservative Party. Day after day, month after month, and year after year, he refuses to receive his security clearance. And it's strange and unacceptable. I did it within a 2-week period. Well, three-week period. And in the history of this country, we are facing foreign threats. And that is an extraordinary thing. So, as a leader, every party leader must receive a security clearance. And now, with respect to the process within the Liberal Party, the Liberal Party took a number of steps with a view to protecting the leadership race process, and it made the process more difficult for people wanting to vote. But that was necessary because we wanted to have a process that we could ensure would be secure. And with respect to the federal election, I strengthened the current committee. This is an independent committee that is responsible for monitoring foreign interference.
Follow-up question. It's about your defense announcement today. The reason we ask for specifics is so we can track later whether you're living up to your pledges. You've talked about submarines. How many submarines? Is it the 12 the Navy wants? Is it less than that? How many extra heavy icebreakers? Are they able to break year-round ice, or are they slush breakers? What do you have in mind? You talk about pay raise for the forces. You talk about a underwater drone fleet. Can we get any detail at all on any of this?
What we're going to do, Steve, is, and it's the right question or follow-up, is we will be laying out in the platform the specifics of all the specifics we can at this stage, respecting commercial confidentiality, not confidentiality, commercial considerations, because particularly with respect to the submarines, these are contracts to be negotiated. They are measured in the tens and tens of billions of dollars in terms of ultimate cost for the submarines. And we don't want to put the Canadian taxpayer at a disadvantage by being overly specific or prescriptive on the precise aspects of that. With respect to the other ships, though we will be specific. With respect to the salary increase, we will be specific. With respect to the overall defense spend, and the differentiation between operating and capital spend, but how the overall defense spend as a percentage of GDP, which is a relevant number for some, how that changes with these measures and more. We will have more defense announcements with the platform and before the platform comes out. So we will lay all that out. As well, we will cost our broader electoral platform, so you can see the balance of fiscal and how we're balancing the budget. So ça arrive dans quelques semaines.
It's coming.
C'est le résumé en français, madame.
That's the summary in French. Hello, Mr. Carney. Yesterday, with respect to the TVA debate, you said why not, and ultimately you decided not to. What made you change your mind? Is it because you want to hide, as Mr. Blanchet says? No, I said, why not, if we were having a debate with all party leaders? But the leader or leaders of the Green Party will not be there. They will not be at the TVA debate. But I look forward to having a debate with all the party leaders, and there will be a debate in French and in English that will be organized through the Commission. I think it's on April 16th and 17th in a couple of weeks. So that's my answer.
Well, I said that, why not if we have a debate with all the leaders of the parties? I now realize that the leader of the Greens were not invited. There are two leaders of the Green Party, as you know. As well, we have the debates, which I look forward to, overseen by the Electoral Commission. In French and in English, the 16th and 17th are the dates. I look forward to those debates, and I'll add that, look, I have spent, during my leadership campaign, I spent more time in Quebec than any other province. I'm going there in 2 days. I have engaged on, je m'occupe sur les grands enjeux pour le Québec.
I am looking after major issues for Quebec, such as culture and the French language, supply management, and a number of other issues that are unique to Quebec.
I'm very much out in the open. Je ne cache pas du tout.
I am not hiding at all. There are some liberal women who are criticizing you for having a lot of men in your inner circle, particularly in senior positions. What do you say to them? That's not correct. There are two people working in my office, Janice Charette, she's a woman, and Marco Mendicino, and I have a number of women who are part of my team. And I'm proud of the strong candidates we have recruited. We have a number of them right here. We have quite a few, and we're united. And we will fight for Canada and for women's rights.
Good morning, Ashley Brooks, CBC News. Can you give us an update on your review of the purchase of the F-35 fighter jets with the U.S.? And you're here at Irving. They'll be building Canada's new destroyers. Will you commit to a review of the U.S.-made combat system on those warships?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ashley. So in terms of the F-35, as you know, I asked the Minister of Defense a little more than a week ago to review that contract. To be absolutely clear, whether it's the F-35 or an alternative aircraft that is doing the best job to defend our country, getting the best value for money, and part of that value for money includes the maximum economic impact here in Canada. We're here at the Irving shipyard. You can see the economic impact of this contract. You can feel it literally in the room with the individuals, with the supply chains, and the effects beyond. So on the F-35, it's a question, first and foremost, as it is for all of these investments, is it making Canada more secure, and is it doing so in the most effective way? We have alternatives to the F-35, so we will explore those, as the Minister of Defense and the procurement will explore how the F-35 program could be adjusted, including greater investment here in Canada, greater production here in Canada, in ways that have that maximum economic impact, as well as securing us. In terms of the combat systems, look, there is a high degree of interoperability, as you know, between Canada and the U.S. Our forces. It's been built up over decades, and that extends to the material and our weapon systems. We are increasingly deliberate about the costs and benefits, or the risks and benefits of that interoperability. The United States is still a strong ally. It is still a member of NATO, and we see advantages. But actually, in all aspects of our procurement, we will be thinking about how to secure Canadians and how to have the maximum benefit for Canadians, because that is what will make Canada strong.
Okay, so no review on the combat systems. And can you give us and as well, there's a report that members of Trump's cabinet and senior security advisors discussed a secret war plan in a group chat that included a reporter from The Atlantic. In light of that, do you have any concerns about Canada sharing confidential information with the U.S.?
I think that, you know, I have had in various guises top secret security clearance here in Canada, elsewhere. I have it again. I'm aware that from time to time information leaks. It's a serious, serious issue. And all lessons must be taken from any of those, including in this circumstance. We have a very strong intelligence partnership with the Americans through Five Eyes. Mistakes do happen, but what's important is how people react to those mistakes and how they tighten them up. They don't deny the mistakes, but they are clear and transparent in addressing them. But I'll just say one other thing, if I may, about the broad thrust of your question, if I may interpret it. Our responsibility, my responsibility, is to plan for the worst, is to think about the most difficult evolution of the new threat environment, what it means for Canada, and how do we best protect Canada. And part of that response is to be more and more Canadian in our defense capabilities, more and more Canadian in our decisions, to take greater ownership. As I said in my remarks, and you've heard me say this before, we have to look out for ourselves.
Hi, Brian Platt with Bloomberg News. We're 8 days out from Donald Trump's next stated tariff deadline of April 2nd. We know you have not spoken with the president yet since you took office. What is your government's engagement strategy ahead of April 2nd with the White House? And will any ministers or officials be traveling to Washington before April 2nd? Well,
I think two things, Brian. One is that the ministers, the Minister of International Trade, Mr. Leblanc, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Madame Joly, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of National Security, others, are in contact with their counterparts. Okay? First point. Second is we have learned, and others have learned over time, that there is an unpredictability to U.S. trade policy. There is certainly an opacity to U.S. trade policy. So how does one respond to that? What you do is you prepare for the worst, and part of that is what we have done in the last weeks. We have made substantial changes to our unemployment insurance program to support Canadian workers. We, unlike the Conservative Party, which is going to use the tariff revenues for tax cuts, use everything for tax cuts, by the way, we are going to use retaliatory tariff revenues to protect Canadian workers and to reinvest there. We have put in place major financial support mechanisms for Canadian companies. We are going to allow them to defer tax payments, also for liquidity purposes. We put in support mechanisms. Cody is behind me. For the Minister of Agriculture is behind me, support mechanisms in the agriculture sector as well. So we've taken a number of precautionary measures so that we can react quickly there. We also have in place a schedule of goods for which we can add retaliatory tariffs to on April 2nd, depending on what the Americans do. So we have done that work and have the ability to put those tariffs in place. And with respect to the president, the point is to have substantive discussions. The point is not theater. The point is to get serious. Sovereign nation to sovereign nation. That's what we're looking for in terms of putting this trading relationship back on a new path that works best for Canada, given the unreliability of America.
In terms of if new tariffs are put on Canada on April 2nd, in terms of a response, you've pointed to the counter-tariff list that was already prepared. Are there any non-tariff measures that are on the table next week for Canada? And I'm thinking particularly export controls or export taxes.
I would focus on those measures are options for Canada. I'll speak in general for Canada. But the tariff response in the near term is several-fold. One is everything I just mentioned, I won't repeat, on protection for workers and firms and others. Secondly, retaliatory tariffs in a way that has maximum impact on America and a minimum impact here on Canada. So we'll be very deliberate on that. Thirdly, it's Canadian procurement, a greater focus on Canadian procurement. And you will have heard in my announcement today this focus on Canadian steel and aluminum. And of course, Irving can be a big part of that as we build out. Fourthly, all the measures to build our economy strong. And that's why the federal-provincial meeting last Friday was so important, because that commitment to move to free trade in Canada, with the federal government, my government, committing that we will remove federal barriers by Canada Day, legislate to remove those barriers by, this is huge. I mean, look, the people behind me have great skilled trades, and actually they have a whole career ahead of them given the shipbuilding contracts. But some of them, for family reasons or other reasons, might want to move to Alberta for a job. They're mechanical engineers, or they're electrical engineers, or they're skilled welders, tradespeople. They might want to move to Alberta, BC, the Northwest Territories for some opportunity. We're going to make sure that they can do it like that. Okay, that's a different thing. So all of that doesn't sound like a trade response, but it is a trade response. And I'll put it again. This is doing it because it's right for Canada. We're in charge of our destiny. But the other thing it does is it shows the Americans that we're strong. And we're going to get stronger while they get weaker, because they are inflicting harm on themselves with these tariffs. And that is going to put us in a better place for negotiations when they come. And that is a crucial point. We're not rushing to the table to take something. Serious discussions, sovereign nation to sovereign nation, comprehensive, Canada strong against America as equals. And that's when we will get the best deal for Canada. Okay.
Yeah, local media.
Your mic isn't on.
Yeah.
I think you said last question.
Last
Is that
question
right?
before
Yeah,
turning
okay.
to local media.
Okay.
Thank you.
Avant de médias locaux. Okay.
Merci.
Bonjour, Monsieur Carney.
Mr.
Vous venez de
Carney.
mentionner la
You
baisse
just
d'impôts
mentioned
promise par les
the
conservateurs,
tax
mais
cut promised by the
vous
conservatives,
promettez votre propre
but you are also
baisse
promising
d'impôts.
your own
Et dans
tax
le-
cut.
ça va priver, si vous êtes élu, ça priverait
And if you're elected,
gouvernement,
that would
l'État
deprive
de
the
milliards
government of
de dollars.
billions of
Et en
dollars in
même temps, vous
revenues.
promettez des
And at the same time, you're
investissements,
promising
notamment en
major
défense.
investments
Donc, en quoi c'est
in
la bonne
defense
approche de
in
priver
particular.
l'État de
So
milliards de dollars dans le
why
contexte où vous voulez
would you
investir?
be depriving the
Et
government
en ce
of
qui
all these
concerne,
revenues?
la baisse d'impôts,
Well, in terms of
du
tax
Parti
cuts,
libéral,
the
c'est
Liberal
à peu
Party
près
tax cuts,
6 milliards de dollars par
it
année.
represents about $6 billion
près 6
a year,
milliards de dollars par
approximately.
Et nous allons dévoiler
And we
le
will
budget,
disclose
dans
the
dans
budget
notre plateforme.
in our
Et
platform
dans quelques semaines.
in a
Et,
couple of weeks.
Avec tous les coûts et
And it will be fully costed and show all the
Alors,
expenses and so forth.
il y a une différence, il y a une grande différence.
But there is a
entre nous
big
et le
difference
Parti
between
conservateur.
ourselves and the
Parce que,
Conservative
par
Party,
exemple, pour nous,
because
nous sommes
for
ensemble
us,
dans cette situation.
we
Et
are working
pour
together,
le Parti conservateur,
and
c'est
in the Conservative Party,
chacune, à sa soi.
it's
Alors,
every
il va
man for
réduire
himself. So they will lower taxes,
shoot des impôts, M. Poilievre, et il va
that's what Mr.
éliminer
Poilievre will
les
do,
garderies. Il
and
va
he will
éliminer,
cut child
la
care
santé
services,
dentaire. Il va
cut
éliminer
dental care,
l'assurance médicaments.
and
Il
cut
va
pharmacare.
éliminer les
He will
investissements
cut
dans
investments
le logement
in
abordable.
affordable housing as well.
Il y a un choix pour les
So
Canadiens,
there's a
un
choice
grand choix.
facing Canadians, a big choice.
Vous promettez
You
doubler
are
les efforts
promising,
redoubler d'efforts en recrutement. Ça fait des
to
années
redouble
que
efforts to
l'armée
recruit people
travaille
to the armed
là-dessus, sur le
forces, but for
recrutement.
years they
Alors
have been
comment
working
les
on that.
Canadiens
So
peuvent vous faire
how can
confiance que,
Canadians
vous
trust
allez
that
avoir
you
la solution, que vous allez
will
réussir
find a solution
à solutionner un problème
to
qui existe dans l'armée
this
depuis
problem
plusieurs années?
that has been in place for a
Très
number
bonne
of years
question.
now?
C'est une question
Well, that's a very good question,
extrêmement importante.
and it's a very important question as
Il faut
well.
changer le système.
We have to change the system, the recruitment system.
Augmenter les salaires.
We have to
Le
increase
gouvernement vient
wages.
d'augmenter les
The
salaires
government
pour les
has
forces,
just
forces
increased
canadiennes.
wages
Et
for
mon
CAF
gouvernement
members,
va
but my government
les
will
augmenter.
increase it even more.
Troisièmement,
Third,
il faut avoir cette idée, cette réalité d'une carrière.
There
dans les
has
forces
to be the
canadiennes.
concept of a
Une
real
carrière,
career
parce que
in the
nous
Canadian
allons
Armed Forces,
investir,
because we
rebâtir
will be investing and rebuilding
canadiennes
the Canadian
pendant
Armed
des décennies.
Forces over
Et ça, c'est une
decades to
carrière.
come,
Alors, c'est
so
un
that
grand
people have a
changement,
career.
un
So
changement,
it's a major
d'attitude
change in
et,
attitude,
j'ai confiance. j'ai
and
la confiance
I'm
qu'on va
confident
réussir.
that we will succeed.
Maintenant, la délégation locale. To the local delegation,
Okay.
please. We'll do one question.
Yeah. Hi, Taryn Grant with CBC Nova Scotia. My colleagues just reported that Sean Fraser has changed his mind and will be taking the nomination in central Nova Scotia. Why do you think it's justified to allow former politicians to take a nomination when another candidate has already been named?
First thing, Sean Fraser is an exceptional public servant. And he took a decision to, for family reasons, to withdraw from public life, and I respected that. I regretted it, but I respected it. I and my colleagues have wanted Sean Fraser to come back and serve Canada at this crucial time. Sean stepping up for our country, if that indeed is what he's going to announce later today, and I don't know that's the case, if that indeed is what he's going to announce later today, is exceptionally good news for Canada, and it is a symbol. It's another sign, rather, of what you see behind me with these great candidates, and we see across this country, of exceptional people stepping up for the Liberal Party at the country's time of need. And I think you'll find that everyone in the Liberal Party in Central Nova, including prospective candidate, is thrilled if Sean is indeed going to be our candidate, but you'll have to wait a few more hours to find that determination.
Thank you.
Il est exceptionnel. Mr. Fraser,
Mr. Fraser is an exceptional public servant, and I look forward to having him as a colleague in the House of Commons.
Next question.
C'est plus direct en français.
Prime Minister, Ella MacDonald, Global News, Halifax. Affordability in our province, specifically when it comes to housing and rent, is a major challenge for Nova Scotians. In Halifax, people are struggling to afford a roof over their heads, and in other areas of the province. What would your government do to address this issue of affordability for Nova Scotians?
Okay, I'm very pleased you raised the issue, and you know, part of the challenge of the affordability here, as you know, being on the ground, is in part because of the success of Halifax in recent years. A lot of people coming to Halifax, but the system is straining, and the housing system is straining. And affordability, in particular with respect to housing, is exceptionally difficult. Absolutely know that. So what are we doing? We're doing several things. In the immediate term, we are, this is a permanent change, but we are eliminating GST for first-time home buyers, and that is a savings of up to $50,000 off the price of a home. And so, you know, you're thinking around a third of the purchases are first-time home buyers for new and substantially renovated homes. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we, unlike the Conservatives, are focused on supply. So one of the biggest impacts on supply is something that we go back to Mr. Fraser just mentioned that he put in place as Minister of Housing, is the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is a very effective way, it's proven very effective here in Halifax, Quebec City, Saskatoon, across the country, to get what are called development charges down, accelerate the building of that. But the third thing that needs to happen, and I'm just going to ask for your patience for a couple of more days, is we need to build affordable housing at a scale we haven't seen since the Second World War. My government is going to do that.
Thank you.
Last question.
Hello, my name is Angel Moore, APTN National News. Here in Nova Scotia, the fishery is very important to all people. Just recently, 3 Mi'kmaq leaderships of Sabaganagati, Millbrook, and Member 2 First Nations say they do not need DFO or federal authorization, and they are going to fish to assert their inherent Aboriginal rights. Do you support this?
What I support is dialogue which balances Aboriginal rights, the realities of the fishery that works towards a sustainable fishery here in Nova Scotia, throughout Atlantic Canada, across this country. And it's one of many reasons why I'm proud to be standing up here with Jaime Batista, and as well as Darren Fisher, and well as the whole group, because what we bring, and this is a core point, this is a fundamental point. What the Liberal Party is bringing to this election is all of Canada. Whether it's a Sean Fraser, or Jaime Batista, Darren Fisher, okay, I'm going to get in trouble, Lena, and beyond, everyone behind me, and beyond, from different walks of life, from different experiences, different perspectives, coming together to work out problems. And so we need that, and this has been fundamental for me, is to make sure that we have a Liberal team that has at the front line, the MPs that are putting themselves forward, that has that breadth of experience. So we're not just relying on the civil service, as good as the civil service is, and we're not just relying on consultations with stakeholder groups. And I would add as well, just on the last point, it was my privilege as Prime Minister to meet with the leaders of the national indigenous organizations last Friday, and you know, I made a point, final point. I made a point both in signal and in substance in my first days as Prime Minister of going back to the founding peoples of this country. The core founding peoples, of course, are the indigenous peoples of Canada, but also recognizing le fait français, avec ma visite à la France et avec le
with
président.
my visit
Et puis,
to France and with the President,
Royaume-Uni,
and
meeting
also
with,
the United
So
Kingdom.
with that, thank you for your questions. And
Merci.
Are you,
Merci,
are you the
Cécile.
last local person? Can we?
Do you wanna
Okay,
take it?
I feel that, yeah.
2 minutes, please.
Yeah.
2
Thank you.
minutes.
Thank
he's
you,
gonna
Mr.
get-
Carney.
Yeah, I'm going to let.
Very quick, Mr.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr.
Okay.
Emerson.
I'm Jacob Moore with Acadia Broadcasting. We have stations in parts of the province that really rely on fisheries. And being sandwiched between the tariffs from China
Yeah.
and the U.S., what will you tell people who rely on that, who are worried about their jobs disappearing?
Well, look, first is very focused on, I met with the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans 2 days ago, 36 hours ago, going through a number of issues around that. We have put in place a series of measures to protect workers, engagement with both the Americans, Chinese on these issues, something we discussed at First Ministers. Look, we're going to fight. We're going to fight for the fishery. We're fighting for a sustainable fishery. It's integral. I mean, look, these are people's livelihoods. It's part of who we are as Canadians. It's part of our core identity. And so no greater priority. So the message is we're there. And again, we have representation, and it's very important to have that representation at the table fighting for those individuals. And we're going to do everything we can to support the fishery through this period and for the medium term. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Merci. C'est ce qui m'a fait la conférence de presse.
Liberal Leader Mark Carney in Halifax. As you've seen live here on CBC Morning Live and CBC News Network, my name is Heather Hiscox, watching this on day 3 of the federal election campaign with you, greeting his team, the incumbents, the candidates for the Liberal parties in the ridings in Nova Scotia, and the workers in the Halifax shipyard. The purpose of that backdrop was to make a defense announcement